Welcome to Mindful Leadership, Transforming Lives, with your host, Singh. This is where leadership meets purpose, presence, and passion. In today's fast paced, high pressure world, we face a leadership crisis. Too often, teams are led by managers who lack empathy, clarity, and vision, leaving individuals uninspired, disconnected, and undervalued. But it doesn't have to be this way. Great leadership isn't born, it's built. The end game: empower your leadership, inspire the world. Every week, join me, your host Singh, as we tackle the gaps in leadership and life coaching head on, learning how mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and compassion can redefine success. This isn't just another podcast, it's a mission to fill the void left by ineffective leadership. And it's not just about leadership in business. Life coaching for leaders and new executives is at heart of this journey. Ready to rise above the noise and lead with clarity, purpose, and impact? Join a global movement dedicated to reshaping the future of leadership one mindful moment at a time. Let's begin. Welcome, Holly, to Mindful Leadership, Transforming Lives. Uh, as you know, we have been doing this podcast to share all different aspects of mindful practices or anything that touches life and humanity. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's jump in with your origin story. When did you first realize that living your glow wasn't just a personal thing, but you had to bring it into leadership and others?
Sure. So for me, I think the seeds really started to take root about 7 years into my parenting journey. I had had a really difficult year personally. We had four small children at home, and this year, in particular, I actually came down with meningitis, and I spent 5 days in the hospital. I was very sick, and then a couple months after that, I lost my stepmother. And going through those experiences and just that intensity of what was unfolding in my life, I told my husband I needed a few days to get away, to reset, because I just felt so heavy in my life on a lot of different levels. And so I took a few days, which I really hadn't done since starting a family. So I was years and years and years into this journey and realizing that I needed a real break. And so I actually spent some time. I went to a wellness retreat down in Arizona, and it was the first time I gave myself permission to have a real exhale. I was really impacted by the silence that I experienced, because anyone having, who has a lot of children at home, one thing that you don't get a lot of is quiet time. And so that was really impactful to me. I really learned to start activating meditation in my life and having more of a gratitude practice. I brought a lot of gifts home in that way from that experience. So that really set me on a path of becoming more intentional, more self-aware. And ultimately it led to me writing my book, Stop, Drop, Grow, and Glow, which launched in 23. But I would say that was one of the most impactful times for me. That was like a big wake up moment in my life for seeing how necessary this work really is.
Wow, that's some story. So what was that breakthrough moment? I know we'll get to the book that you mentioned, but individually, when was that breakthrough moment that you realized that yes, I got all those gifts, I brought it with me, uh, but the work that I'm doing matters more than anything else that can be done.
Hmm. Well, I think for me, I've always been a natural caregiver. And so I'm formally trained as a nurse. So I used to give in that way before we had children. And then I just for me, I know the intensity of what it means to be a parent. There's so much joy, but there's also a lot of intensity and a lot of learning that goes along with raising other human beings, because you're also raising yourself at the same time. So there's a lot of growth happening on different levels. But I felt called to service to help uplift our people, parents in particular, because if you look at statistics of how so many parents are struggling in this day and age, it's immense. A lot of depression, a lot of anxiety. And that trauma, that heaviness that our parents are feeling, it transfers to the children. And then they
Mm.
carry it, and it becomes this generational patterning that's not healthy. And so for me, I just felt like it was time to sit down and give back in a way that would make impact. And I'm very much in alignment with the work I'm supposed to be doing. And it's a very fulfilling work to help uplift other people.
Wow. So for the parents who are listening to this, let's go there for a second. And I get goosebumps because I had my kids and I completely understand what we're talking about. But for the parents who are running 24/7, either for their work or with a calendar of kids, when stress hits, what is your personal system for flipping it?
Hmm. Yeah, I would say keep it simple. Don't overthink it. When stress hits, breath is one of your biggest gifts and friends you can partner with because we aren't taught to breathe. But one of the things I've learned is that honestly giving yourself that couple of seconds to, like, if you're feeling triggered or you're feeling angry or you want to, if your children are lashing out at you, you want to lash out back. It's it's an invitation to notice where your buttons are being pushed, then to give yourself that moment of pause. So literally give yourself maybe 4 to 5 seconds to pause and breathe. That would be my first recommendation because then you're also noticing, okay, what's happening in my body? It doesn't take long, but then it gives you those few seconds to gather your leadership skills and to then respond instead of react because we have a lot of reactivity in this world and we have a lot of reactivity in homes. And so that would be uh, a really healthy starting point to start shifting into healthier patterns in the home and beyond.
So we'll come back to this topic a little bit later because before I don't want to miss the main thing here. Um, you talk about living your glow. So
Mm.
what does that look like on the ground for a burnt out individual at 6 a.m. on Monday morning?
Well, hey, my heart goes out to all of, the humans who are feeling burnt out because there's, many, many, and I have my own days for sure. But, what I would say is that living your glow, it's a foundational practice. And so I would say to really start living your glow, you have to go back and do some foundational work on yourself to really activate that at the highest potential. And so it's, I think to just say that I'm going to wake up and be glowing, it's a great goal. But I think if you have a lot of underlying things going on under the surface that you haven't taken care of, or maybe you have habits that don't support your system at an optimal level, it's going to be hard to truly activate that and sustain your glow. So a lot of the work that I promote is, in my framework in particular, it's learning to stop and self-assess. Like, how am I doing as a parent and a human being? I think you need to nurture both and and doing some of that internal gazing, so it's going back and fixing some of your personal foundation. I also think a lot of times parents in particular, they get thrown into parenthood and they have a lot of unfinished business, or they're dealing with a lot of baggage or drama that they brought in, or that they've been carrying a lot of their life. And so even if it's not forefront, I think a lot of times we have a tendency to carry those wounds with us, and they can impact your life and keep you from being as present with the people in your life as if you've taken the time to go back and do some reparation, it helps you to have more presence, I believe, in your life. So it's stop, drop, grow, and then glow for a reason. So it's stopping, then you're dropping any drama, trauma, any personal past lived experiences to help you become more present. And then grow is learning to really partner with habits in your life that are going to sustain you. So that's things like clean eating and exercise and meditation, or finding times of stillness throughout your day, sleep, maybe checking on your hormonal system. And then the glow piece that is the pivotal part of this question is
Mhm.
that is the outcome of doing all of this important work. And another layer for the glow is practicing that daily self-care so that you can glow from the inside out, which will not only impact you, but everyone that you come in contact with.
So I did have that question in my mind when you talk about glow, and I read your book. I actually I prepare for interview. I want to make sure that I understand the concept, and then I pick up a few questions. So you deconstructed the framework, and we talked about the power of pause. Now let's stay with glow for a second, right? So what exactly does it mean to glow as a parent? And I guess how is it different in today's world of instant gratification?
Mm.
Right? We talked about people are running at a very high speed all the time. So how do
common expectation of instant gratification versus uh, the framework that we just talked about. How does glow manifest? I would say if you practice it, how would I
Yeah.
know that I'm glowing?
Well, it's a feeling. And I always think it's from the inside out. I think we are taught to look at external validation or external trappings in life to feel happy or feel sustained. And I think those things can be great, but I think they only take you so far. So a lot of my beliefs and my practices and what I promote is learning to activate that from within. And it's something where you feel nourished and sustained from the inside out. And so, glow, like I said, it's learning to take what you've learned from my framework and then you're practicing it. It's not something that you pick up every now and then. It's something that you're daily, you're practicing these good habits and you're taking care of yourself on every level so that you're better able to serve others. And I believe that we all carry within us this power to become luminous. We are luminous, but I think we have a tendency to kind of get dulled by society and by a lot of things out there in the world. So I think you have to have a certain level of discipline, thoughtfulness, a willingness, a curiosity to cultivate this glow, because when you are taking care of yourself and when you have gone back in and done that reparation and those repairs on your foundation, that is where the glow comes from. It takes work, it takes a desire and a willingness to be the best version of who you can be. And it's about taking care of yourself as a parent, but also nurturing that individual that lives in there as well. It's not about losing your identity in the flow of raising this next generation.
Now that's I hope the listeners they can actually pause there and really think about what you just said. So to help our listeners, you mentioned a tool called the 5 Rights of Parenting,
Mhm.
and as we look at that, can you quickly go through what are those 5 rights and what is the most challenging one for parents to actually implement?
Absolutely. So the 5 rights are designed to be a quick way to touch base with yourself on how you're presenting as a parent, and they work to help ensure you're doing the right thing and not causing unnecessary harm to your child or yourself in the process of parenting. And so you want to think of these rights as a supportive parenting protocol. And as I mentioned, I was formerly trained as a nurse. And so there was something called the 5 rights of medication administration. So I took kind of some of I always like to build on my knowledge. And so I really wanted to take some of my foundational learning and then put a parenting spin on it. And so that's kind of how these were born. Um, and so the first one is right now. And this is about being in the moment with your child and being present, not texting or working on 5 different things when your child needs you, but when you show up, that you really show up and you're all in for the time that you have with them. And what I will say here, though, is there's going to be plenty of moments where you really are in the middle of something and can't pivot. And so there's nothing wrong with that, but I think it's important to connect and say, in 20 minutes or in an hour, we're going to set this time, maybe give them a hug and let them know that they're seen, heard, and valued. Because in parenting, there are no repeats and time is ever fleeting. And so you just want to maximize this precious time that you have and live in the moment as often as possible. So that's the first
Well,
one.
okay.
The second one is right intent. And this is steeped in being intentional with the choices you make, the guidelines you set, how you're treating your child. And what I would say is that if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, it might be time to reevaluate your parenting strategy. And what I mean by that is, maybe you're passing on unconsciously to your children what you experienced as a child, but you didn't love your childhood. And so it's an invitation to get curious about why you're doing what you're doing. And um, I think, just an opening for you to go deeper with who you are, how you're showing up, and the impact you're making in your family's life. That's the second one.
Well,
The third
I'm making notes. I've got questions once we get through all 5.
Okay, love it. The third one is the right use of speech. And you asked which one is the hardest to implement. This one, I believe, is the hardest. And for me, at least, because I think as a parent, and I'll get into it here in a second, but as a parent, there's lots of moments where, you might get triggered or you're running from one thing to the next. And so I think speech is one of those things that can be the hardest for parents to implement, myself included. And for me, this right, I believe that your voice is a tool of creation. So you have the power to uplift or tear down in your home and with your loved ones. And so I think this one, as I said, is can be one of the toughest rights to implement for this reason. So I think it's important to speak with mindfulness as often as you can. And then if you forget, that you apologize. I believe in the power of apology, and it's something that I use all the time in my house with my kids. And I think it's an important thing to role model because we are all perfectly imperfect, and we all say things that we, at times that we wish we could maybe unsay or have a redo. And the reality is that we're only human. So when you misstep and when you misspeak, to really be intentional about making reparations and connecting in a way that's helpful and not hurtful.
Wow. You have put such a simple framework, and it almost sounds like, and when I was reading it, I felt the same thing, that if you go through and read it sincerely, it feels like common sense, right? Um, and you have introduced, you actually addressed that I was going to ask, where did you get the idea of the five rights? And you explained it's improving and expanding your knowledge and furthering it. I think it's a beautiful science behind what you have just cultivated in this framework. I was talking to somebody yesterday. I just shared with him that, hey, I'm reading a book now. I'm going to talk to the author and I'll get back with you. Um, but I think we take parenting as an accident
Yes,
that just happened in our life, and we just continue giving that accidental experience to our kids,
that's right.
right?
And
So,
almost view it with a
right,
lens of a burden, right? That it's a burden in
right,
some way instead of the divine gift that it truly is.
joy, yeah, wow. I'm literally having goosebumps as I'm talking through these things, because so let's pivot for a second. What is the most moving or impactful success story that you have heard from a parent who
Hmm.
applied your stop, drop, glow?
I've heard lots of different feedback. I've had a lot of amazing reviews. And I think the biggest thing for me is just that it's been an eye-opening for parents to partner with the idea of self-care and how that can help, when they take care of themselves, that it actually is making their family unit stronger. And I think
Mhm.
it's one of those things that we have been taught in many ways that self-care is selfish. And so that's one of my part of my big mission too, is to really promote that as a necessary component of being successful in the home. So I think just, that my framework has brought a level of calm and joy and intentionality back into that connection piece, but also the self-care and how important that is in really thriving as a parent, and something that for me is it's really a passion of mine to promote it, because I know what it feels like. I have 4 kids of my own and they're all still at home. And I know that when I don't take care of myself, I'm not as effective as a leader or a mother in my home.
Mhm.
So I believe in it so deeply.
So that's another piece that I think there is a underlying message there. You discuss teaching children to operate from a place of wholeness.
Hmm.
Right? Would you mind sharing an example or a story that you have seen or heard, or what is that wholeness? What is the expectation there?
Hmm. Well, when I talk about wholeness, I believe it's learning to take care of your mind, body, spirit, and environment. It's the whole package. And I think a lot of us are good at taking care of, maybe one or two, maybe even three, but I think to be intentional about really thinking about, how am I taking care of my mind? How am I taking care of my body, my spirit and my environment, whether it be my home environment or making time to get out, outside, or, that can show up differently for everybody. But I think when we're talking about teaching our children that, I'll give you an example. Like for me, one of the practices that I've been very dedicated to for years now is waking up before my family wakes up, and I go down and sit and I have my morning, my meditation and prayer time. So I make my green tea, I have an infrared heater. I have this whole thing that I like to do because it fills my cup. I feel grateful And it helps me feel connected to the world as well. Like I feel more connected in my body and then also how I can serve humanity. But what's interesting is that I will have my children show up. Different children will come down. Like if somebody does wake up while I'm in my practice, I have made it welcoming for them that if they want to come and sit and experience just having stillness and quiet, that they are welcome. But I did also set some expectations that this is quiet space, and so if they want to come, then just the need for them to respect, that those boundaries that I've kind of set up. And they've been amazing witnesses, and then also just awesome at at times dropping in and joining me. And so that's an example of teaching children how to find stillness within themselves. And I think in this age of distraction, as everyone's overstimulated and so many children are on phones and they don't know how to, I think boredom is a dying art. Children don't, nobody's bored in this day and age. So I think when we're talking about that, it's just you're role modeling. So how do we teach children? Well, it starts with you as the leader of the home. So if they're seeing you take part in these different practices and the way you're eating and the way that you're, making time for good sleep and there's a lot of different levels, but those are just some examples.
Wow. So two topics that I always ask in my interviews. The first one is when we talk about compassion and we talk about compliance, right? So how
Mm,
do you see individuals, for their parents, leaders, when to show compassion and when to hold the line with accountability?
that's a great question. Well, I think you know your children best, so when to draw the line. That comes down to setting boundaries. I really believe in boundary setting. I believe in that conscious connection and collaborating, but I also believe in having established boundaries because it's healthy. It's healthy for you. It's healthy for your children to know where that door is, right? So what's tolerated, what's expected, and what's not. I think having boundaries is very, very healthy. Um, and if you don't have boundaries established, maybe consider setting some, maybe a family meeting or whatever. But to have some of those things in place it's going to be personal and differ from home to home. But, I think when we're talking about compassion versus drawing the line, it goes back to what are the boundaries, which I just talked about, but also,
Mhm.
um, I'm trying to. This is a big question. When it's compassion, I think it's a feeling from the heart. So like, is this time to connect heart to heart? And I feel like when you're drawing the line, it's more mind based. Like, okay, this is it. We're done. Or you need to pivot. I need to pivot. This isn't. So I think it's the difference that I see is that when you're extending compassion, it's that heart to heart connection. When you're drawing a line, it's more of a mind to mind. Like, okay, this is it. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. One of my guests actually mentioned two words, benevolent dictator. So
Mm-hmm.
parents have to become that benevolent dictator because you have to not only manage what you have with the kids, but you also have to manage what you have to pour back into the kids. So it's kind of a back and forth. It's one unit, and I think
Yes.
a lot of those things you're sharing also that as a parent you should know your kids better than anybody else. So let's pause there for a second. The second part of that question, when we talk about compassion, compliance, and mindfulness and stuff like that, where do you think the future of mindful leadership is heading, and what
Mm,
is being missed right now?
oh my gosh. That's another great question. Well, I feel like mindfulness is kind of this buzzword these days, right? Everyone's talking about mindfulness. And so what I think is great about it is that it is becoming more widely accepted and adopted into our society, which I think is a fabulous thing. I think we all can use mindfulness. I think it's the base of a really solid foundation. I just see it as being one of those fields that's going to continue to rise and expand. And I think in this time that we're living in that sometimes feels uncertain and chaotic and uh, you know, I think we need to have practices to return to feel grounded. And so I just see, I see the field of mindfulness as being this. this field that's going to continue to expand, grow, and explode, honestly, around the world, because it's not just in the US that we're needing these mindfulness practices or making time to connect with spirit or whatever it is. It's we're all feeling it. I feel like the whole world right now is kind of on fire in different ways. And so I just see this as being a field that's going to really take off. The fourth right is the right use of power. So you want to really wield your power with care, because you are the one responsible for setting boundaries, the discipline, and ultimately have the final say in whatever issue might arise along the 18 years that you are blessed to have your children under your roof. So I think as a parent, you want to be mindful of not abusing this power, and then again, being intentional with the framework that you set for your child and your home, for them to operate in a way that feels good and healthy. And then the fifth right is the right use of love. And this is by far my favorite right, because I believe that love is the cure for all that ails us, parenting and beyond. And this right should be used as many times a day as you can aspire to. And really letting your child know how much you love them and care for them. It's going to plant their spirit in deep, rich soil as they grow. So you want to give your love freely and without expectation. And truly, your child will likely mirror the love you give them. But even if they don't, like as they get older and they're teenagers, that love is being received, it's being felt, and it's making a difference.
Yeah, that is very powerful for parenting. Like I mentioned, I mean, you have almost created a science and a simple framework that people can actually use day in and day out. On some other time, I'll share with you. There's a whole program that we have created on empty nesters. Once the kids leave the house, then what? So that's a conversation for another day. But we really appreciate it. So, what is one word that defines great leadership today?
Kindness, I think, is
Uh,
very.
What is the hardest truth leaders avoid facing about themselves?
Can you ask that again?
What is the hardest truth leaders avoid facing about themselves?
Being authentic, because there's vulnerability there.
We have kind, we have authentic, and if ever every leader did this one daily practice, so burnout would disappear, right? If every leader, if ever, first of all, it's not going to happen, but if ever every leader did this one daily practice, burnout would disappear. What is it?
Partnering with the idea that love is the answer. Love is going to lead us all home.
That brings me to my closing question. If the audience or anyone who reads the book after this remember just one sentence from 5 years from now, what would you want it to be?
Self-care is the secret sauce in learning to thrive in parenting and not just merely survive.
Awesome. This has been a really good time. Would you like to share where the listeners can reach out and find you and how they can engage with you?
Of course, yes. So I have my book, Stop, Drop, Grow, and Glow. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere you buy your books. It's also available on Audible and anywhere you buy your audiobooks. If you want to connect with me, my website is liveyourglow.live, and I am on Instagram at Holly Swenson _liveyourglow.
Awesome. So welcome back next week with a new guest. For today, it was Miss Holly, a great friend of mine, and we look forward for you to get great and get the glow. Get the book, read it. It's worth your time. Have a good day, and we'll talk again.
Thank you for watching Mindful Leadership Transforming Lives. With me, your host, Singh. We are honored to have you join us on this journey to explore the transformative power of mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and authentic leadership. Tune in every week on transformationtalkradio.com at noon Pacific on Tuesdays, where we will continue to explore how mindful leadership can create a ripple effect of positive changes in your life and lives of those you influence. This show is dedicated to helping you lead with purpose, presence, and passion. Whether you're navigating the complexities of business, building strong connection with your team, or striving to make a meaningful impact in the world around you. To learn more about the show, access additional resources, or dive deeper, visit singpowerupcoach.com. Remember, leadership isn't just about what you do, it's about who you are. Let's continue to transform lives together, one mindful moment at a time. See you next week.